Closed captioning of this program is underwritten by the Office of Self-Determination and Constitutional Development of UVI.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Good day and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidate Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX-TV for well over 35 years. It is our hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elective office in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all our programs for the 2024 election year right here on WTJX-TV with candidates seeking office as a senator in the 36th legislature or as a delegate for the Constitutional Convention. For the first time also, we are interviewing candidates for the boards of election and education. Although all the candidates for these positions were invited, not all responded or accepted the invitation. We are delighted to have here today, however, 3 candidates running for the position of delegate for the Constitutional Convention in the St. Croix District. I am Denise Singleton, a member of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, and I will serve as the moderator for today's program. The candidates have been informed in advance of the guidelines for the program. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. The first responder to each question will be rotated among the participants. Answers are generally 60 or 90 seconds. Changes in timing of a question will be announced in advance. Any comment directed specifically at another participant will be followed by a rebuttal of 60 seconds. All are expected to be respectful of everyone. So let's begin. I will ask each candidate to identify who they are and to state their ballot number. We will learn more about each as our discussion ensues. Let's start to my left with candidate number 1.
Greetings. I'm Usi Raymond Richards, a candidate for the delegate to the Constitutional Convention. My ballot number is number 3.
Hello to the voters of the United States Virgin Islands. I am Patricia Welcome, and I'm running as a delegate to the 6th Constitutional Convention, and my ballot number is number 8.
Candidate.
Good day. My name is Devin Carrington, another candidate for the delegate to the 6th Constitutional Convention. My ballot number is number 9.
Okay, let's start with some questions, and as I said before, we will rotate each question. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Senator Richards. What motivated you to become a delegate for the 6th Constitutional Convention? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you for the inquiry. The motivation came from my long experience and expertise in dealing with this particular subject matter. I was fortunate enough, I believe, back in March of 2000 to appear before the U.S. House of Congress subcommittee, providing testimony on the clarifying amendment to the process of adopting a constitution for both the Virgin Islands and the place of Guam. In addition to that, in 2010, in my capacity as a minority leader in the legislature, I appear again before Congress to provide testimony on the fifth constitutional document that was before them. In that context, I am entrusted with the belief that we can in fact move forward and adopt a constitution on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands and voted on by the Virgin Islands people.
Okay, Ms. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. What motivated me, I've been practicing law in the Virgin Islands for the last 34 years, and I've been a resident here since 1968. And what motivated me is that having looked at the last 5 conventions, I realized, given my background as an attorney and also a lifelong resident of the Virgin Islands, that I can add a lot of good input that hopefully will give us the constitution that we so need to have here in the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Mr. Carrington.
Bob Marley says every man has a right to decide his own destiny. I believe that it's time for the Virgin Islands as a people to decide their own destiny. Look at the islands to our south, look at the islands to our north. Most of them are independent, self-determinative. I believe that it's time that the Virgin Islands be in such a position. I am a lawyer. I think that my expertise and my experience in the law can lend itself to the process, and I'm hopeful that I get the opportunity by the electorate voting me in.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to question 2, and this time we're going to start with you, Ms. Welcome. The question: were you a delegate in any previous constitutional convention? If so, why do you think the process did not end with a congressionally approved document? You have 60 seconds.
No, I was not a delegate in any of the last 5 conventions. And the reason why we were not able to come up with a constitution for the U.S. Virgin Islands is that fundamentally the prior conventions did not acknowledge the sovereignty of the United States and the United States Constitution. And that's where I would start if elected as a member of the Constitution, the 6th Constitutional Convention. We have to start with the United States Constitution because we are United States citizens, a territory of the United States.
Okay. Mr. Carrington. Do you need me to repeat?
Oh, it's the same question?
Same question.
Repeat it, please. Thank you.
Okay. Were you a delegate in any previous constitutional convention? If so, why do you think the process did not end with a congressionally approved document?
Well, I never served in a previous constitutional convention as a delegate. But based on my reading of the documents that have been provided to me, there were 9 separate points at issue that the Department of Justice found did not comport with the public law that created the opportunity for us as a territory to write a constitution. Those 9 reasons are debatable, but that's the basic reason that the Virgin Islands has not yet developed their own constitution.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, same question?
Let me begin by simply saying no, I was not a member of the previous constitutional convention or any one of the 4 that preceded it. I want to emphasize that the subject matter of both the Virgin Islands and I believe also still to date Guam in adopting their own constitution is hampered by the constraints that were developed in the congressional law that was passed some previous years ago to allow us to discuss the subject matter of adopting a constitution. More importantly, I think that as a federal government, the United States, and it exists in law. I believe a law passed in 1976, introduced by then Delegate to Congress Ron DeLugo, acknowledged that action should be taken on a proposal.
Finish your thought.
Action should be taken on a proposal constitution by the Virgin Islands within a 6-month period, and give us the opportunity to vote on it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to question number 3. And Mr. Carrington, we're going to start with you. What do you see as the talents, skills, or attributes needed by all delegates if the convention is to be a success? And how have you demonstrated those skills in your career or life? You have 90 seconds.
90 seconds. I think that one of the main attributes that needs to be possessed by any delegate is the ability to read and understand and interpret what the law requires, and to be able to draft language that comports with what the law requires. My training and expertise as an attorney, I think, lends itself to that task. And I believe that having served on all 3 branches, legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, and my experience in dealing with law, interpreting law, amending law, all lend themselves to the task at hand.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Richard, do you need me to read that question again for you?
That'd be nice.
Okay. What do you see as the talents, skills, or attributes needed by all delegates if the convention is to be a success, and how have you demonstrated those skills in your career or life? 90 seconds.
Thank you for rereading that question. Let me first say that in any group of individuals, you must in fact have individuals that have a willingness to listen, understand, and comprehend what is being shared by each one of the individuals who are part of any organization. I mentioned earlier in my opening statement the subject matter of my experience and expertise, and goes beyond the 5 terms that I've served in the legislature in the capacities of whether a president, a chairman of a committee, but also outside of the legislature. I've had the opportunity to work on the creation of governing documents for over 212 countries that are referred to as National Federation, presided over the adoption of governing documents for the Americas, which have some 43 countries or national federations. I've done the same within Central America and the Caribbean. In the Caribbean district, we had some 23 bodies that we work with. And so it is my impression that not only serving in those capacities, but serving the capacity as a president and a leader in those organizations, that I've successfully been able to share with others the importance of coming to consensus in the adoption of a document that will serve the purposes of all of us. Understanding clearly that not each and every one of us won't be able to include those things we see as priority, but the majority should precede and overrule.
Thank you. It's welcome.
Thank you. The most important thing for me is to be respectful of my colleagues who would be on the 6th Constitutional Convention, to exhibit patience and, as Senator Richard said, to be a good listener. And those are skills I've honed as a trained mediator, being able to facilitate resolution when there are conflicts. And I believe that that's an important attribute that I will be bringing to the Constitutional Convention. And it's important to be able to respect people who have different opinions and to be able to work together to come to one goal, which is to have a constitution for the United States Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question. And we're going to start with you, Mr. Richards. What are the key issues you see that must be addressed in our Constitution, and which of those issues are you particularly interested in working on, and why are you interested in working on them?
The key issues in my mind in regards to our constitution that will govern the people of the Virgin Islands is the subject matter of structure, how government is set up, how the executive, legislative, and judicial branches function. As a matter of fact, it's only a little more than a decade that we've been able to bring laws in place that allows for a Supreme Court in the Virgin Islands to involve itself in the decision-making process for jurisprudence. And so that what my focus that I would like to pursue is the subject matter of organizational structure and how best does the government of the Virgin Islands establish itself to provide efficient services to the people of the Virgin Islands. Having said that, I think the most important thing is how we put the laws in place to provide a constitution that can govern the expectation of pushing us to the position of being a self-determined group of people for self-determination.
Thank you. Ms. Welcome.
What's important for me is that, first and foremost, we acknowledge that we are a territory of the United States, and that we have to acknowledge the Constitution as that document that governs the Virgin Islands. And whatever we come up with as a convention, we must work within the confines of the United States Constitution. And what's important for me is that everyone in the Virgin Islands, who, especially individuals who are voters or have the ability to vote, are treated equally. Without regard to your gender, without regard to where you were born, it's important that those of us who have chosen to live here and to produce here and to invest here, that we are not treated differently because of where we happen to be born.
Thank you. Mr. Carrington, do you need me to repeat?
Please do so. Please do so.
Okay. What are the key issues you see that must be addressed in our Constitution, and which of those issues are you particularly interested in working on, and why? 60 seconds.
I think that one of the key things for me is the ability of for the Constitution to set up a structure of a government where one man, one vote is the rule. Currently, I think that the structure of our 15-member legislature is disproportionate to the amount of people we have in each district. I also think that we should have provisions in the Constitution that speak to sub-districting, so we can have more, how can I say, representation from the grassroots of the people. I also think that this constitutional convention should be prospective in a way that it speaks to ultimate self-determination. Even though we are a colony of the United States, this constitution should be one that looks to self-determination.
Okay, we're going to change the format a little bit, just a little bit. We're going to ask the question. You're all going to get a chance to answer it, but you're going to be able to add or rebut or comment on the question. Okay, so we're going to start this time. Ms. Welcome, you're going to start. And the question is the issue of Native rights off the table for you in this convention? Why or why not? How should it be dealt with? Should it be raised? You have 60 seconds.
Yes, Native rights are off the table because, in my view, and this may be radical for some people, but the natives that I acknowledge are the Indians who were displaced by Columbus and wiped out by Columbus. And those of us who have been vested here, I've been a resident for over 50-something years. I'm a citizen of the United States. The Virgin Islands has been my home. I'm invested here. I have 3 family members buried here, and the determination as to whether I could be governor or whether I could vote in certain things should not be based on where I was born.
Thank you. Mr. Carrington, would you like to add or rebut or comment?
I'd just like to say that inherent in the term or in the process self-determination is the ability of a people to self-identify, to define themselves. So in that sense, I don't take Native rights off the table. I think that that's something that's debatable, but that a set of people who have the right to self-determination, it's nothing that's granted to us. That's a natural human right. That set of people should be able to define themselves in the way that they see fit.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Carrington.
Am I going to get a chance?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you are. I checked you off too soon. Do you need me to repeat it? I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
but I'm going to say from the onset that you use the term native rights and comments being made to line that up under the subject matter of indigenous. I think for me, it is on the table. And it will remain on the table because I have the context of when citizenship was granted, because reference keep being made to the United States, when the United States purchased this place in 1917. And it wasn't until some 10 years later that the people who were living in the Virgin Islands was granted citizenship, and not fully given to these people until almost 1940. And so we were a people without a country, and so that citizenship, native and indigenous, is something that remains on the table for me, given my understanding of its history.
Thank you.
May I follow up, please?
Okay, we're going to give you 50 seconds to rebut.
So I've heard my colleagues talk about self-determination, and what I'd like to point out is that, in my view, drafting the Constitution and self-determination are 2 separate things. The Constitution will not necessarily determine our destiny, because we know we've got to go to Congress and we've got to go through a whole process for self-determination. So I don't want the viewers to be confused that somehow or the other getting a constitution is going to determine our status with the United States.
Thank you.
And I just want
Okay.
to rebut by saying writing a constitution is part of the process of self-determination.
And I want to make it clear that I don't think, at least for me, speaking for myself, that we implied that Constitution is political status. And the subject matter that is before us is that it requires some fundamental understanding of the genesis of where the Virgin Islands began under the quote-unquote colonial status of the United States of America. I think that is important, and that has to be made clear and completely understood.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Again, we're going to follow the same format where you can add or not, but you're only going to have 50 seconds after the first one. So we're going to start this time with Mr. Carrington, and the question is, do you think the lack of agreement on political status will seriously impact the creation of a constitution? Why or why not?
The parameters that are set on the public law that came down from the Congress are pretty clear. This process is not a process that is a definitive process for self-determination. We are tasked with writing the Constitution. The parameters for writing the Constitution are set forth in public law and in the legislative enactment that allowed for the formation of this Constitutional Convention. So I think no, status shall not be a factor that inhibits the passage of a constitution.
Thank you. Ms. Welcome, same question.
I couldn't
50
agree.
seconds.
I couldn't agree with Mr. Carrington more, and he summed it up beautifully. It's not about political status, and it should not prevent us from arriving at a constitution in the 6th convention.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay. Do you think the lack of agreement on political status will seriously impact the creation of a constitution?
The lack of agreement on political status has already, over the past constitutions, impacted the adoption of a constitution. The fact that the territory had rejected the supposed proposals that came before them for political status in the past has in fact served as a vehicle to not properly understand the real purpose of what a constitution is, given the lack of not having a political status defined. And I think it wouldn't hamper, but I don't think that we can achieve bringing a constitution before the people successfully without making clear its impact on not only self-determination and taking us towards political status.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question, but with the same format. All right. Given the diverse demographics of the territory, how will you ensure that all voices can be heard in developing our Constitution? And we're going to start this time again with you, Mr. Richards, and you have 60 seconds on this one.
Thank you. I think the diverse voices can be heard in the development of a constitution beginning on November 5th, when you in fact vote for number 3 on the ballot, Lucy Richards. Because all of the elected members of the District of St. Croix in this particular instance are registered voters who are selecting persons to act on their behalf and represent them in a forum such as a convention. And I think the fact that you are representing a particular group, segment, or number of people in a community provides you the opportunity to be not standing on the soapbox, but to be the advocate and the voice for some of the concerns that they are experiencing. And I believe that given my experience in past elected offices, that I've been able to bring forth, represent, and take into consideration the members of the constituencies that I've served over the past couple decades.
Thank you. It's welcome. Same question.
It's important that voters, when they go out on November 5th, look at not just the top, what I call the top positions, Senate and senators and delegate to Congress, but look at all of the persons running for the various categories, and of course, especially the delegates to the Constitutional Convention. I think a process of educating people, letting them know what your position is, and also getting feedback from them. But I believe that the prior convention and what came out of them gives us a basis to start to see what the concerns are with our population.
Thank you.
Repeat that question, please. Thank you.
Okay. Given the diverse demographics of the territory, how will you ensure that all voices can be heard in developing our Constitution? You have 50 seconds.
The best I can do is get out there and let people know who I am, what this process is all about, and hope that they are interested enough in the process to be able to participate, and through their vote, let their voice be heard. We do have a phenomena in the Virgin Islands of voter apathy that I hope we can overcome. But this is a very, very important process, and I think that it's not only for now, but it's for the future of the Virgin Islands, and the people need to know that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, but with the same format. Ms. Welcome. Currently, for an initiative to pass in the Virgin Islands, it must receive 50% plus one of all the eligible voters. This is the highest bar for an initiative to pass in the entire United States. Should this be changed? Why or why not?
Yes, it should be changed. And as you said, it's one of the highest bar in the country, and my recommendation would be that it's 50% plus one of the individuals who voted in on that particular initiative. Because what we don't want is to make it so restrictive that we're not able to have the input we need to put forth whatever initiative that it is.
Okay, same format, add or rebut. You have 50 seconds. Do you want me to reread the question? Okay. Currently, for an initiative to pass in the VI, it must receive 50% plus one of all the eligible voters. This is the highest bar for an initiative to pass in the entire United States. Should this be changed? Why or why not?
I echo Attorney Welcome. I think the percentage is too high, and it should be 50% plus one.
Thank you. Mr. Richards?
Thank you. I don't agree that it should be 50% plus one of the persons who vote, particularly since the panelists who have joined me today agree that we have voter apathy. 50% plus one of the persons that vote means that if only 100 people out of 80,000 people who are registered to vote, only 100 go and vote, then 51% of them can adopt an initiative. Yes, the bar is high. It requires us to revisit the initiative, recall, and referendum that was adopted by Congress on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands, and something also introduced by then Delegate Ron DeLuca. And so it is important for us to find some way to ensure that we can, in fact, achieve these goals.
Thank you.
May I follow up, please?
Okay, but we're only going to give you 50 seconds.
That's okay. The important thing is to educate our voting public. Depending on what the initiative is, people will come out and vote, but we have to make sure that we educate them, get out there and talk about the issues. But to say voter, yes, we do have voter apathy, but once we do the education, people will come out to support what they want to support.
Okay, can we move on to the next
you
one?
can.
Okay, Mr. Carrington. Let's talk about the size of the legislature. There have been proposals for 9, 11, and 15 members. Do you think the size of our legislature should be apportioned to population size by looking at population numbers every 10 years using census data as background? We had 15 senators for a population over 1,000. We still have 15 for a population of 85,000. And a seemingly decreasing population as more people move away. Should this be discussed, the size of the legislature? Mr. Carrington, you have 60 seconds.
I think the size of the legislature should be on the table. I think that the setup of the legislature, as I said earlier, is disproportionate to the population. I think that the concept of one man, one vote should require us to revisit what the legislature, how it's comprised. And I also think, as I said before, that we should have a system where we have districting, whereby people can be, a senator, elected representative can be more accountable to each of the people that they represent.
Thank you. Mr. Richards.
Yes, I believe this subject matter should be on the table. I think sometimes we try to make comparison of the role of a senator in the Virgin Islands to different states without having a proper understanding that on most stateside level, not only do they have a state senate, a state house, they have county commissioners, city council, municipal government, election of mayors, and in some instances even electing judges. And so the structure, as I mentioned earlier, as one of my priorities in regards to the structure of government, the structure of our legislature is in fact deficient and is not today put together in a manner that it can effectively serve the populace while making sure that the representation between the two existing districts, the District of St. Croix and St. Thomas St. John, are equal.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Welcome. Same question?
Yes, definitely the size of the legislature should be addressed, but I also want to add that we should not have full-time legislators, and that my position is that the legislators should be called into session a set number of times of the year, and of course, if there are certain circumstances that require additional sessions, but yes, the size should be reduced, and it should be a part-time legislature.
Okay. All right. Let's look at St. John. Even though there is an at-large senator from St. John, some citizens there still feel underrepresented in the legislature. What ideas could you bring to a discussion on this matter in the convention? You have 60 seconds, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Richards.
And thank you for the question, and I'm glad that question followed the previous one, because it brings us right down to the subject matter in regards to the way the current legislative body is set up. And for instance, as a good example, you're the one that raised the issue of the residents of the island of St. John, but the residents of the island of St. John also vote for representatives, up to 7 senators who reside on the island of St. Thomas or St. John and are within the district of St. Thomas, St. John. And so that is a particular issue in regards to how we structure not only the subject matter of, and I hate to call it district representation, but I think it's more so constituencies that will be properly represented. I am in support of setting aside a certain amount of seats within a 15-member full-time body who serve in a capacity that will be able, at large capacity, within the territory of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Welcome, same question.
Yeah, St. John's representation definitely must be addressed because, as Senator Richards pointed out, they get to vote for 7, but then they're also limited and have this at large, and they've got to spend money to campaign in an at large seat. I don't really want to go down the road of districting, but we've got to look at population and how that's done. It's something to be developed. I'm not prepared to discuss the details today.
Okay. You have 60 seconds, Mr.
I like the word that Senator Richards used, whether you want to say districting or constituencies. I think that if we break the islands down into districts or constituencies, the key here is that each district can be able to hold accountable someone that they elect. Direct representation, direct accountability. So I go back to districting as a solution to the question.
Okay, thank you. All right. We're going to go back to the previous format where you're going to start with 60 seconds and everybody answering. Afterwards, we'll have 50 seconds. And we're going to start with you, Ms. Welcome. And the question, currently, all our resolutions are non-binding in contrast to majority of states. Should this be changed by our Constitution? Why or why not?
That's non-binding resolutions. I'm trying to think of some of the resolutions that's come up recently, honoring certain people who should be honored. And I'm not sure that, and again, without doing any research, that I want to put that in the Constitution. It's something that I would want to research fully because I'm a researcher before I make a commitment in this forum. But it's definitely something to consider because not all resolutions need to be binding.
Mr. Carrington? Now you have 50 seconds.
When you speak to resolutions, one that came to my mind was the resolution that the legislature passed most recently to have the insular cases and the doctrines of the insular cases looked at and repudiated. the fact that our resolutions are not binding speak a lot to status, which can't be escaped, that we can't escape the issue of status. And so the fact that we have non-binding resolutions are not that are not recognized or given respect by the Congress is a problem for us that we need to address ultimately, and that ultimate address comes with the addressing of status.
Thank you. Mr. Richards.
I smile when you ask the question. Given my years of experience as not only a member of the legislature, but as a researcher, and I was fortunate to also work with Attorney Carrington for a senator. There's no such thing in the Virgin Islands within the halls of the legislature as a binding resolution. Resolutions simply say, be it resolved, I would like to do this, and I said this. And if you have anything within that piece of document that began as a resolution, then it has to have some enacting clause that said this and this and this will be done. And so as a territory, a piece of property bought, owned, and can be sold by the United States, which is the Virgin Islands, we can't have any other binding resolutions.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on, but in the same format. And this time we're going to begin with Mr. Carrington. There is funding in the bill for expert advice. What kinds of advice or what kinds of experts do you think would be needed for the convention to be successful? You have 60 seconds.
I believe the conventions in the past have used expert advice. We need to have experts on constitutional law because we are writing a constitution. We have to have experts who understand and can educate us on what is required in a constitution and quite frankly, what is required to make this constitutional convention successful as it relates to the public law that allows for this process to go forward.
Thank you. Senator Richards?
Yes, I would follow up and concur with the statement of the previous speaker relative to the subject matter of expertise being required and necessary for individuals who are elected as delegates to have the advice and somewhat guidance of individuals, not only in constitutional law, but also in the proper development of a plan to market to the general public of what is included in the Constitution, what it is we're trying to achieve by having this constitutional document reviewed, approved by Congress, and voted upon by the majority of people who are registered voters. And so that in that context, it is necessary to have those funds available to provide the technical guidance. I think in all deliberative bodies, from the legislatures here in the Virgin Islands to state senate, state houses throughout the United States, that there are professional expertise who, for a price, provide the guidance needed to these decision makers.
Thank you. Attorney Malcolm.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Carrington. Constitutional law experts are important, and especially given the 5 attempts and the 9 findings that came out of the last convention, it's important that we have constitutional law expert or experts who can guide the members of the body. Because even though we have a number of lawyers running, I still believe that we would need to have somebody who is a constitutional law expert.
Okay, thank you. Next question. And we'll begin with you, Mr. Richards. Mm-hmm. What strategies could you promote to keep the public engaged or informed of the work of the convention? And we're going to give you 90 seconds.
Thank you. I think it's been somewhat a misnomer, particularly in our discussion here today, that one of the reasons that our constitutions in the past, whether it was the first, second, third, or fourth, failed before the voters was because there was some particular content or context within the Constitution that the people them was had an uprising against. My basic concern at this particular point is that we are able to engage, inform, and as stated earlier, educate the public and the voters about really why we need a constitution, what's in the constitutions, what are the parameters given existing law, right down to the indigenous, native, whatever discussions that they have, so that they can properly understand the choices that are before them and understand that they have a legal basis and footing by which they stand on to make the decision where certain things are included. And so having said that, I am looking forward to putting a lot of energy after the development and the agreement around a majority of members of the Constitutional Convention, a lot of energy not only in making sure that we advocate in it before Congress, but we promote, inform, and educate the populace of what's being sent to Congress on their behalf by the elected delegates.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. The act which created the Sixth Constitutional Convention provides for funding for educating the Virgin Islanders about whatever we've drafted, and we want to be able to aggressively utilize all means outlined in that. I mean, for example, it says English and Spanish language broadcasting, radio, billboards, etc. And I believe that when we have an aggressive educational campaign, hopefully we would have a terrific turnout at the referendum to support what we have drafted.
Thank you. Mr. Carrington.
The Constitutional Convention, this Sixth Constitutional Convention, as I understand it, is a deliberative body, but it's also a body that needs to come to consensus. And I think that part of the educative process that we need to embark on is to appear as a body to educate the people as the process is ensuing, where we are, where we're going, and where we want to end up. So I think that it's important that we as delegates, not as individuals necessarily, but as groups or as a group, extend education to the people so that they can understand where we're going, what the process is, and where we're trying to get to.
May I add just one point? May I?
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on the statement Attorney Carrington made, which I think sometimes is lost. The Fifth Constitutional Convention document that was sent to the U.S. Congress, particularly to the House of Congress, was a document that was adopted by consensus majority. And so what was included represented the majority of persons in a deliberative body for Congress to consider. And I just think sometimes we miss that point, that each one of us who are sitting here today may have an opinion, may have a position, may feel a certain way, but in the end, what's included is what the majority has agreed upon in a consensus.
Anything else to add? Because we're going to move to our closing question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There are other key issues for discussion in the convention, such as elected attorney general, elected judges, and immigration. Do you have any thoughts on any one of these topics? And we're going to give you 90 seconds with no rebuttal. And we're going to begin with you.
I'm sorry, I was waiting to find out where you were starting. That's the only reason I was looking at you.
It could be
Let me say this. I think that there's been a lot of talk recently about elected attorney general. We had talk about elected members of the judiciary, even elected judges. I believe these are subject matter that can and should be discussed at a constitutional level. I've had a lot of experience in dealing in my capacity as a executive committee member of the National Black Caucus of State Legislature, and also executive committee on the National Conference of State Legislators, about having a perspective and better understanding on how it impacts on how that process works. Given the levels of elected offices that we have in the territory, we need to make sure first that the elected offices we have within the territory are done in a more functional basis before we jumped on and adding on the addition of other offices that needs to be elected. And then at the same time, you have the subject matter of campaign disclosure and the influence that anyone that is running for public office is placed in a position to have to accept financial contributions. And how does a financial contribution impact me, Usi Richards, the judge that sits on a Superior Court bench that's been elected by the voting public? And so all these are key elements that needs to be properly understood.
Thank you. Yes. You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with Senator Richards that we have to be careful about politicizing all of these positions, especially judges and attorney general.
Yes.
I do want to touch on immigration, because you asked the question about immigration.
Okay.
And we have to be mindful that as long as we remain a territory of the United States, we have to operate within the confines of the immigration laws. But yes, there may be certain things carved out because of our unique location here in the Caribbean for our neighbors with respect to certain exceptions. And that's on the table for me.
60 seconds.
I think immigration is part and parcel of the larger status issue, and it has a very great impact on what happens in the Virgin Islands, but we address that at another time. But I do think that I want to speak about, looking at the 5th constitutional draft, there are a few things that I really think are important: economic development, the preservation of natural resources. As the draft it reads, it speaks to protection, but it speaks to preservation of natural resources, but not to preservation of natural resources. Some people might say those words are synonymous, but that's one thing that I think we should add. And we also does not speak to preservation, preserving public ownership of our lands for agricultural purposes, for other purposes. So it's really important that there are a lot of issues that I think in reading the 5th constitutional draft can be revisited and should be revisited.
Thank you. Now each candidate will have 60 seconds each for a closing statement. And this time we're going to start with Mr. Carrington.
I think that this is a very important process that we're embarking on. We've made 5 attempts. They have not been successful. They have not gone to fruition. I think that the 5th Constitutional Convention is an excellent document, that we should work from that document in making changes so that we can at some point get to the juncture where the federal government says, okay, I have an issue with somebody okaying what I want to do, but the whole issue of adopting the revised Organic Act, to me, is oxymoronic, because an Organic Act comes from the people. The revised Organic Act of 1954 did not come from the people. So we have an opportunity to do so now, and we should.
It's welcome. 60 seconds.
Yes. First, I want to thank you and WTJX, the League of Women Voters, for having me here today. And I want to remind the voting public that my ballot number is number 8 under the section for delegate to the 6th Constitutional Convention. And we have an important opportunity to demonstrate our ability to be self-governing by creating a constitution that's within the confines of the United States Constitution, and a constitution that speaks to our uniqueness, both in terms of location and the diverse population we have. And I look forward, if elected, to working with my colleagues in drafting such a constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Strict 60 seconds.
Thank the League of Women Voters, WTJX, for having me here as part of this educational forum to the voters. I want to emphasize that it is my plans and expectation, not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. Simply meaning that I intend, prior to November 5th, to not only wait for a forum as we are on today, but to go through different forums on my own at my expense to inform and educate the public not only about what the Constitution is about, but why you should support Usi Richards, number 3 on the ballot, as a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. I think should not be a popularity contest. I think that we owe it to the people who we say that we want them to know about the Constitution, to understand the context of the Constitution, but more importantly, to tell the people who you are and what you plan to contribute to this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates and viewers, and thank you, WTJX TV and staff, for today's program. The League of Women Voters hopes this program has helped you, the voter, in understanding the candidates and in so doing, inform your vote in November. The League reminds you that your vote determines the future of the Virgin Islands. Every vote does count. During elections, we often see an individual who barely makes the cut because a few more people did vote, or one who barely loses and wishes, if only I had a few more persons to vote. So let your voice be heard by your vote. It's your right. Take it. Thank you for watching. I am Denise Singleton for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands. Vote early or vote in November. Just vote.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Closed captioning of this program was underwritten by the Office of Self-Determination and Constitutional Development of UVI.